You can run on for a long time, run on for a long time, run on for a long time. Sooner or later gotta cut you down, sooner or later gotta cut you down. Go and tell that long-tongued liar, go and tell that midnight rider, tell the rambler, the gambler, the backbiter, tell him that God's gonna cut him down, tell him that God's gonna cut him down. Well, my goodness gracious, let me tell you the news. My head's been wet with the midnight dew. I've been down on bended knee, talking to the man from Galilee. He spoke to me in a voice so sweet, I thought I heard a shuffle of angels' feet. He called my name and my heart stood still when he said, John, go do my will. Go tell that long-tongued liar, go and tell that midnight rider, tell the rambler, the gambler, the backbiter, tell him that God's gonna cut him down, tell him that God's gonna cut him down. You can run on for a long time, run on for a long time, run on for a long time. Sooner or later gotta cut you down, sooner or later gotta cut you down. Well, you may throw your rock and hide your hand, working in the dark against your fellow man, but as sure as God made black and white, what's done in the dark will be brought to the light. You can run on for a long time, run on for a long time, run on for a long time. Sooner or later gotta cut you down, sooner or later gotta cut you down. Go tell that long-tongued liar, go and tell that midnight rider, tell the rambler, the gambler, the backbiter, tell him that God's gonna cut you down, tell him that God's gonna cut you down, tell him that God's gonna cut you down.
Good morning and welcome back to the channel Grand Colombia, and welcome to another Coffee Time Live here in Armenia, Colombia. It's 74 degrees out, kind of a little rainy, right? Drizzly.
Yeah.
It's going to have a high of 76, a low of 63 at 6 o'clock in the morning. And Colombian peso, I didn't put it in there, 43.39. So, geez, that's twice. It's not my fault. I'm a little loopy. I'm airheaded. I'm struggling from tons of different drugs. Okay. And some of you know, I don't want to go into this and beat a dead horse, but had another emergency room visit. I'm alive. I'm getting much better. I do have, I think, 7 medical tests that have to get scheduled. It was a good experience. I went to the San Juan Hospital again. Took me in, moved me right along. It was considered an actual emergency, and so I was treated accordingly, and I really appreciated that. For about 5 hours, I was in excruciating pain, but what was interesting is they hooked me up to an IV. They don't use your narcotics. They use some kind of byproduct of scopolamine. And so it goes, they hook me up to the IV, and then they have this big injection thing that shoots it in there. And after about 20 minutes, pain was gone. So that was cool. So there's that. I did have a bit of an adventure. Come Thursday, I'm back in the house. A doctor had come here Wednesday, and she gave me an IV and some prescriptions, and we're planning on, follow-up stuff. It's my personal doctor. Come Thursday, I wake up and I'm paralyzed. I could move a little bit, but I couldn't move. It was the weirdest thing. And all I could think of is, I hope I don't pee myself. But I hadn't been eating or drinking, and so I ended up not peeing myself. And after some sleep, and then things started to move again, although I am kind of in slow motion. And I got a real brain fog going. I have a question I want to ask you guys. The last couple thumbnails, well, I've done it for a bit longer, but I want to know what you think. I've been having AI do them, so I asked for a Santa baby. This was last week. And so she's got the coffee cup there, and behind her it says coffee time. And this week I asked for a coffee time elf. And so there's the coffee time elf. It actually was all beige, and I said, add a little color. And so that's what it came back with. So I don't know. What do you guys think? See, the thing with thumbnails is, after a while, I'm up to about 900 videos. After a while, it's like, I don't know what to do. You have to put one in. I don't know what to do. And it's just easier to say, hey, AI, give me a Santa baby, will you, with a cup of coffee. It just seems easier. But I want to know if you guys hate it or not. We're going to get to Dan's topic for the podcast, but I do have, last week I promised to explain about my car, and which will take all of about 2 minutes. And then I got a couple news stories, and then we're going to go to our topic. What's our topic?
What's my mic? I was going to talk about culture shock.
Oh, yeah.
The one thing you never see covered on YouTube videos.
All right. So first of all, my car. So here's my nice car. Looks nice, all-wheel drive. And I hit a post. You can see it kind of crunched and grinds a little bit there. I mean, it wasn't bad, but actually after the thing was washed, half of the damage went away. But what happened was, parking garages are tight. This vehicle, its nickname is the Black Elephant, Negro Elefante, because it's so huge. It's unusually huge as compared to most vehicles. And so the turning radius, when you come down, you get this way, and the ramp going down, and you have to take wide turns to do it. And then going up, you have to get as close as you can to the cement square post. So what happened was, I'm getting ready to go up the ramp, and I'm about this far from the concrete post, and a car comes zipping down, this little thumbnail car. It comes zipping down and went right towards the front of my car. And out of instinct, which was bad instinct, I just kind of went like that. Well, there was no place to go. And so all I did was go. He stopped and moved over quick enough. And if I had done nothing, it would have been fine. But instead, my bad instinct caused me to swerve. And so I did that. So anyway, that's the car crash. Not even worth telling, really. But all right, yeah, I crashed the car. It was my fault. What do we have here? Turtle. He's pretending he knows Spanish now. Buenos dias, mi amigos. From Su El Centro, Socorro, El Tortuga. Dr. Charles, hi all, Monteria, Cordoba. Loving the heat. Was in New York City Friday, temperature 30, here 86. Ooh, that's about as hot as it ever gets here. That's too hot. Only here 6 days this month. You have a a wife or a girlfriend or something there. I think he's got, well, you wouldn't know, but I kind of keep track of guys and kind of vaguely remember. Juka, greetings from Finland. And as always, thank you, Juka. And thank you for the extra little Christmas gift you sent me yesterday. I appreciate it. Gil, good morning from Northern California. How you doing? Curious Pero, howdy from San Antonio, Texas. What a nice place San Antonio is.
Yeah, I was born in San Antonio.
No kidding. I didn't know that. What a beautiful little town. If they only had outdoor air conditioning. It's just too freaking hot. But it's one of the coolest towns.
Well, it's not hot in the winter.
Yeah. Francisco, good morning from Pennsylvania. And George, good morning from Manizales. How you doing, George? Hi, all from Ontario. Don't know who that is. See, when they moved to Rumble,
Changed their name.
and they made them cryptic. So all the ones that I used to know are gone. All right. So we got a couple news stories, and then we'll get on to Feel Better. I'm working on it. We don't quite know what it is. It was a replay of last March or April when I went to the emergency, and I had inflammation of my esophagus, and it was the same thing, only it was much worse. And the biggest danger of it, outside of the pain, is just unbearable. But the pain causes your blood pressure to skyrocket. I mean, it got to like 212 over 120 something. And from what I understand, that's crazy high.
Yeah.
That's territory where you have potential of a stroke. And they told me this time around, it could actually, I have no heart problems, but a repeat of these things could cause damage to my heart. So that's what all these tests are going to be for, to see if anything got damaged and whatever. Good morning. Would you bring a lot of clothes if you move permanently to Colombia? That's a great question. See if we can hold that till we get to your culture shock. Try to remember that one.
Yes, I will.
Because I won't. I can't remember my name right now. All right, news. Just 4 little items. If you live here in Armenia, license plate limit for taxis in Armenia is modified. What this means is 1 day a week, depending on the number of your license plate, you cannot drive into Armenia. But for the taxis for the holiday, they've changed that formula up, and there'll be like 10 times more taxis able to go in. There's still going to be some restrictions, but much less than it was. So that's pretty good, because people have actually been, particularly when it's raining, they're having a hard time getting taxis. So I appreciate the city recognizing that right away and moving to change it.
Yeah, especially during the holidays.
You know, if you got to have a government, let them at least be like that. See the problem, work the problem, solve the problem. This one, this is kind of interesting. It returns to boost commerce and Christmas spirit. This is on Catorce or 14th Street. This is the walking area down in El Centro. And what's interesting to me is that it's more of the same. Because normally, if you walk down there, you see somebody has their art out in display and they're doing drawings. And you'll walk by and there'll be a couple guys playing guitar and singing. You walk down further, there'll be somebody doing, I don't know, juggling or whatever. It's normally like that. Well, what they're saying is it's going to be like that, only it's going to be a lot more and more organized. So there's actually going to be some kind of art, official art exhibit. I'm having trouble.
It'll be encouraging more participants.
So it's an awesome place, and it's just going to be more awesomeness than it typically will have. This one is a bitterly sore subject here in Quindio. There's a ranking to number 1, number 2, number 3, tourist popularity location. And Quindio, for the first time ever, placed 17th. And what what has people up in arms is there was a problem with notification for the information to go to them, or whatever the deadline was. I don't know what the problem was exactly, but they only got 3 areas of Quindio that actually reported, first of all. Second of all, Quindio, as far as I could go back and see, has never been lower than number 2 for tourist popularity. It's like almost the most. San Andreas, the islands, number 1 year after year, and Quindio number 2. And to go from number 2, I mean, you'd say, oh, number 3, well, maybe something edged it out. No, 17th. So people aren't very happy about that, but it made the news. And last news item, very happy about this one. They tried to do, let me show you, tax reform, and it failed in Congress. Petro tried to put through, the scale won't mean much to you. You have to remember Colombia is only about 60 million people. It's a small country as compared to population. You can't really think of it in the U.S. And a $12 billion increase in a budget here is big. And they work on balanced budgets. So Petro tried to put through an additional $12 billion set aside to create new social welfare programs that would have to be maintained year after year without any basis of how to pay for it. And while Colombia prints its own money, they're very conservative about it. It's what keeps their money valuable. And Petro wanted to do something like Venezuela, where, yeah, we can hand out all this money and we'll just print more to cover it. And the Congress said, hell no. They didn't go along with it. And I'm very, very happy about that. And if we have time, I'll tell you another little story of something that's actually still happening, but kicked Petro in the teeth. And, you have to like that. All right. Look at a couple comments and then we'll get to your thing. Hi from Ontario. Chad, good morning. How you doing, Chad? Aren't you supposed to be down here by now? And where's Rob? Rob didn't check in today. What's up with him? All right. So here we should all do weight loss surgery in Colombia. Okay. I love La Catorce. 17th, it's low. It's insane. Okay. Shoot.
Okay.
I'm going to relax.
Well, yeah, Lauren, you're a first for me in my experience. I've never met a gringo who has been scoped and not robbed. So using the scopolamine in the hospital is new to me.
It was pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, probably without the robbery, it's more
I will say,
more of an adventure.
When they were injecting it, so I was getting an extra dose of it.
Yeah.
Before it mixed with the saline. From where it went in, all the way up my arm, it burned. It like, ow, it burned.
Yeah.
And then kind of.
Then you.
Yeah, I was like, I was worrying for a minute.
Well, I was going to talk about what would I call it? A feature of moving abroad for anyone, from where you live to a new country. And This is something I don't see mentioned on other videos where people are encouraging expats, encouraging people to travel or try new experiences. And that is what some people call culture shock, which is a stress that can become kind of disorienting. And in some sense, it's also caused by disorientation when you encounter a new culture. My first overseas experience, I was 20. Actually, I turned 21 overseas. And to minimize the adaptation issues, I had moved to England to go to the University of Nottingham in England. And I was prepared for things to be different. And they spoke a language that I mostly understood. So it minimized, I think, the transition difficulties to go from the USA to England. What was surprising to me was that I experienced culture shock not while I was in England, but when I moved back to the USA. I had gone to high school in the Chicago area, and when I moved back, I moved with some friends who lived in New Mexico. And the first time I experienced culture shock was in New Mexico, because I expected moving back to the US to be familiar. But I've got to tell you, New Mexico is not familiar to people from Chicago area. Now, I'm not originally from Chicago. As I said, I was born in San Antonio. So I had moved around within the US, but living in New Mexico was more foreign to me than England was. So the most significant recollection I have of experiencing culture shock there was that I found myself staring at a wall, and I realized over an hour had passed, and I don't think a single significant thought had occurred to me during that hour. And I think that's just your brain trying to accommodate to all of the stress of change. So I think most people will experience this when they move to a new country. They're probably looking forward to all the benefits they heard about how the cost of living is lower, there are a lot of leisure time activities to enjoy, all the pluses that you'll hear from travel vloggers. But what they don't mention is when you are in a country and everything you encounter is unfamiliar. I'll make reference to two different trips I took to China, for example, Taiwan. So make your own distinctions, whether that's China or not. But when you can't read any of the signs and you don't understand what anybody is saying, and this was in the days before we had Google Translate. So actually, international travel has never been easier than it is now. But back in those days, it was really disorienting to really not be able to understand much of what's going on around you. So if you have recently moved, or you're contemplating a move to a new country, it's good to keep in mind that you may experience some disorientation, and you might find yourself with absent-mindedness or other types of stress indicators. So it might be useful to think about a couple of ways to cope with that. Most of the time when we move to a different country, we're not just looking to, if you're from the US, for example, I know not everybody who watches is, but as an example, if you're from the U.S. and you move to a new country, to just move in to an expat enclave where you're surrounded by other Americans is not really a new cultural experience. So you're probably looking to experience your new country, and but it might be good to remember that you can contact other expats who are from the same country that you're from and sort of get some counseling from them. How have they adjusted?
You know, there's something that you said earlier about you went to England and you didn't really experience anything too much, but then when you went back to the United States, that's when some things hit you.
Right.
And I had a similar experience. I had traveled, of course, if you travel in the United States from state to state to state, particularly some years ago when everything wasn't, you know, all Applebee's chain.
Homogenized.
Every town would have its own unique character, and you go down south, it would be, you know, something very different culture in a lot of ways, bless their heart, you know. And so I had traveled quite a bit, and I'd been to Mexico and been to, you know, Canada and things like that. But when I joined the Marine Corps, I went to a whole bunch of different countries. And I'll tell you, when the first time that the difference in cultures affected me, I was overseas and I was on a ship, and we did the Vietnam airlift. And it was after that, I forget how long, but it was after that I got some leave for a few weeks to go back to the United States. So I went back to New York. And that's when it really hit me. See, while I was overseas, we had like Armed Forces Radio and Television Service or something. There's an acronym for it. And so we would get little news clips of what was going on over there, but we were living it, so we didn't really need the news. I go back to New York, and I'm seeing these news stories about the orderly withdrawal of people. There was nothing orderly about it. It was mad chaos. People were dying. People were getting shot at. My helicopter was riddled with holes from getting shot at. I had a good friend who burned up in his helicopter. It was what you would think in the worst kind of situation. But I go back, and all the news is talking about is how awesome everything went.
Yeah.
And there was nothing awesome about it. It was crazy. It was completely ill-planned. It was something forced on us. And that's when I realized, that was my first realization of fake news. You know, early 70s was that. But it was so strange to me to be around people that were walking around living their lives and listening to this and thinking that's the way things were, when you just came out of a meat grinder and you have a completely different perspective. You just want to, don't you know what the hell is going on? It was so bizarre. I don't know if that's culture shock. I don't know what that is, but it was the first time in my travels that shook me to my toes about how people live in different realities.
Yeah.
Maybe that's less culture, but the culture thing, because I'd traveled so much and I didn't know languages. I've been to a lot of countries around Asia, all over Europe. Didn't know language, so you kind of pantomime your way through. I had no problem accepting how things were. I've been fortunate in that. I'm just kind of accepting of it. I try to understand. I try to do things that way. But I see a lot of people that don't travel very much become, and I would say the ugly American, but it's not just Americans, people from other countries too. You can tell people that don't travel much because they're the ones constantly complaining about things that are normal.
Right. In a different context.
You know, everybody's getting gringoed. I'm so sick of hearing that. You're not getting gringoed. You're just stupid. You just don't, you know, you have a transaction. It's your choice whether to do that transaction or not. And if you don't know what values are, that's on you. That's the guys there trying to make money. Caveat emptor, buyer beware. Mm-hmm. You know, that's everywhere. But I'm getting gringoed. It's because I'm a gringo. No, it's because you're an idiot. Does it exist? I mean, I suppose. But the thing is, you ultimately have the ability to say no. So you're not getting gringoed unless you agree to get gringoed.
I was thinking about it this morning because I've lived in Nicaragua also. The taxis don't have meters. Every taxi driver in Nicaragua will try to steal from you. I guarantee you. They'll double, triple charge you everywhere you go. That's just the way they do business.
When I first went to Ecuador, they didn't have meters. I was there when they switched over to meters. Mm-hmm. And it was ridiculous. They just charge, like you're saying, they just charge whatever they want.
Right.
And it wasn't just me. I had a friend who's from Cuenca, born and raised there. And depending on the taxi driver, it could be 2-3 times more.
Yeah. You know, I've become friendly with the owner of a bakery near my apartment. And the other day I was asking about a new item that he had. And so I said, well, I'll take 2. And usually things like donuts and muffins and whatnot are 2 meal, 2,000 pesos each. And so when he said dos mil, I handed him a 5. And he had just given me change. He knew I had a 2. And so he said, no, it's dos mil para todo. It's 2,000 for both of them. So he handed me the 5 back and I gave him the 2. I mean, I've never had anybody in Colombia try to cheat me, frankly.
I have, but it's rare. Yeah. And here, and also part of it is where I live. I live in Armenia, and it's much different. In Medellin, that's a whole different ballgame. I almost don't even consider that Colombia. You know, it's like if you go to the United States, to a place that's massively tourist driven, you're going to get cheated every time you turn around. You know, it's like they're going to be selling souvenirs, and they're going to be selling them for 5 times what their standard, what they're worth. You know,
standard price is already marked up to cheat you. So
yeah. So I mean, but here in Armenia, I've told this before many times. You know, I'll have taxi drivers get out and chase me down to give me the change back because I'm kind of absent-minded. I'm thinking of something else, and it was only like 100 pesos or something. And senor, because there's a lot of pride, and they don't want anybody to think that they took advantage. Now, there have been a couple over the course of my years here that have tried to keep change, but it's really rare.
If it's a couple of meal, I will let them keep the change. I don't worry about it. But they don't expect a tip in most cases here,
because tipping's not a thing, and no. That's a U.S. thing. If you go to Europe, tipping's not a thing. You know, it's becoming a thing here simply because it's been forced on them by people from the U.S. You know, it's like, at some point, when do you stop saying no for somebody's trying to hand you money? You know, and the problem is it's attitude, because you have a lot of people that come from the U.S. and they'll look at the taxi driver and they'll say, oh, you poor taxi driver, here, you need this extra, you know, and that's what's going on, because I've had them tell me that. They may not say it to the taxi driver, but they have this attitude about, well, I've got so much more than them. They don't understand the the scale of economy, and that taxi driver is living a nice middle class life.
When he's working for a living,
He doesn't need your pennies, you know.
he resents the charity because he has some pride.
Culturally, it's an insult.
Yeah.
So now it's, you know, it's kind of getting away from that a little bit, where a couple of years ago they actually made a law in order to control tipping that was going on in Medellin, to where they put a maximum of 10% at a restaurant, and they have to ask you permission in order to get that from you. I've noticed in this last year that asking for permission is starting to fade away too.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
If you don't notice it, it's
yeah, that used to be religious about it. Cliff, how you doing, Cliff? Culture shock is when you travel internationally and are accepted in another country, and your home area and family don't understand nor accept, ridicule your travel. They think you're crazy. Well, yeah, shouldn't patronize. Because I can only speak for the U.S. because I'm from the U.S. People develop their realities based on a lot of faulty information. For example, people that know you in the U.S. probably think you're sitting amongst a bunch of drug runners. You know, they think that, okay, Pablo's gone, but somebody else is right down the street from you.
a
And
lot of them think Pablo's still here.
you know, it's like that was what, 40 some years ago. You know, it's things change, and there are issues here. Cauca is one of them. People getting killed every single day in Cauca. There's basically no government. But I can name several places in the U.S. you could categorize the exact same way. You know, so it's like, well, we'll point to the outside and we'll just ignore what goes on here because I don't live in it. Well, I don't live in Cauca. I live here. And here, it's not only perfectly safe. Somebody said, well, even in Armenia in the north, I wouldn't go out after dark. Why? Why wouldn't you? I mean, there's no issues here.
Somebody commented last week that I'm brave to live in the South. Where I live is perfectly safe.
Well, that's the thing. There's only 4 basic barrios in the South that are problematic. I won't go into them because I know them, and there's nothing to go in there for.
Right.
You actually live very close to one, but those lines matter. Mike moved within 2 blocks of one of those barrios. Never had an issue because he wasn't in it. He was 2 blocks away.
Right.
And that's kind of the way it works.
I don't want to forget about Hugo's question. Would I bring a lot of clothes if I move permanently to Colombia? For me personally, clothes last a long time. I don't know. I know some people have to have new fashions every season, but not me. A lot of times.
I just buy these once in a while.
So the way I would recommend moving to Colombia is maybe 2 suitcases and a backpack, and whatever's the most important that'll fit in that space is all you're going to need. You can buy everything else you need in Colombia. So, I mean, I know people who move overseas, not necessarily just to Colombia, but to other countries, and they'll send an entire shipping container with their furniture and all of their kitchenware. I see no point in that whatsoever. That's a waste of money.
But you don't know until you're here what you actually need. With clothes, for example. Every day since I've been in Colombia, I wear black T-shirts. Now, I replace them as they wear out with, Coffee Time logos. This is the newest one. It's got the little microphone on it. I just got this today, along with my new mug with the new logo. that's not even set in stone, but that's all I have bought is some of these, and not even many of those over the 6 some years I've been here. I came with 5 pairs of black denim Levi jeans. I still have them, and they're still basically the same condition. They've just, some of the black is washed out of them.
And you could have gotten by with 3.
In the house, I wear shorts. I've had to buy some underwear, but I bought those Mercado Libre. I just had them 5 pairs for, $6 or something. Dropped them off. They were fine. I came with 2 suitcases, and I was more concerned. I had my chef knives. I had a couple books. I had, I had my little treasures I didn't want to give up, but hardly any clothes. I did bring a jacket, never wear it. It's been hanging. What was the point? Now it depends on where you live. If I was in Bogota, I'd want some warm clothes. But if you have clothes and it's like, well, let me bring a suit. For what? I can go to the nicest places in my T-shirt. Nobody will say a word. I bring sweaters. Unless you live in a place like Bogota, you don't really need sweaters. Unless you're really cold-blooded, then maybe get yourself a pullover or something. But
when I lived in Medellin, I was taking a trip with some young backpackers and going to Bogota, and so I bought a quilted jacket to ride the night bus, which gets famously cold. And then it was cool in Bogota, and it was good to have that jacket. It is now, some 7 years later, our family jacket. We still only have one jacket in the household, and it's the one I bought, well, maybe 6 years ago. And you don't need, in most of Colombia, you don't need a lot of clothing. You see more and more locals. Now, it used to be almost like the law that men never wear shorts in public. I think
you're seeing more of it now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it came culturally from their upbringing, because they had to wear short pants to school. And when they got older, then they could move to long pants. And so they associated wearing short pants with being childish. Nowadays, you'll see them wearing a Dallas Cowboys jersey and a pair of shorts.
And a baseball cap with New York Yankees.
Yeah, and some flip-flops. So it's changing.
You know what's hilarious to me is when people live their entire life in a place where, as you know, because I tell you the temperatures every single Sunday, and it's always 74 to 78 degrees at the time, and it's 78 degrees to maybe 82 degrees, and it varies just a couple degrees. Here today, because it's a little cooler by a couple degrees than usual, I can guarantee that if I go out on the street, I will see women, men don't do this, but I will see women dressed up in winter parkas, furry pullover, hood with fur sticking out, winter parkas as though they're in Alaska.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. And it's like, oh, it's freezing. But if it's 2 degrees warmer, now they're hot. It's just craziness. Lily, may I ask a question? Of course. Live in West Coast is very difficult to travel to Columbia Coffee Region. There are not direct flights to coffee regions from LAX. Flights have been changing up, and I know we've lost a couple flights, but the one that's probably the most useful international right now, there's some being added this year or this next year, but right now, if you fly Copa, you'll go to Panama, but then from Panama, you'll fly here. And you can fly to either Pereira or to Armenia directly. What city do you think is better to raise a teen in terms of safety, values, and education? Well, the values come from you. Manizales or Armenia? I'm planning to relocate Colombia in June. That's a pretty simple question. Either. Manizales is a great city. It's maybe my favorite city in the world. or close to it. Maybe some in Japan, but I love Manizales. I just don't live there because I love the atmosphere and people in Armenia. I have a connection to it. But Manizales is awesome. It's more progressive as far as, I don't mean progressive politically, I mean progressive as in more modern. Restaurants are more European style, larger instead of small tiendas. Of course, they have those also, but they've got a lot of big, beautiful restaurants, and they got 7 giant shopping malls in a city of 500,000 people. You know,
I would say a personal visit to each would be the best way to decide.
But to live in Manizales, you have to know how to live in Manizales, or you can be miserable. So, knowing where to live, so you're not climbing steep hills and things like that. But if you understand the layout of Manizales, it's a fantastic place to live, very safe. They've got their few barrios too. But the interesting thing about Manizales is it's actually spread over 7 mountains, and the ones that are problem are not on the main mountain. They're actually off on one of the other mountain peaks. So I've never had any issues there. Armenia statistically is one of the safest places in Colombia. Statistically, I don't know. If you live in the north of Armenia, nothing happens. If you live on certain areas of, what's the name of the place? Milan, Poblado, is it? Turtle used to live there. There's a couple areas. If you live there along 23, nothing ever happens. So you'll certainly find safety. Education, pretty much the same. You're getting Colombian education. You may want to opt for private education. One of the nation's most famous colegio, high school, private high schools, is right down the street from me here in Armenia. There's people, rich people from Bogota, send their children to Armenia to attend this private school. And the tuition, I believe, is about 10 million pesos a year. So that's $2,500, I think.
Yes.
So,
yeah, for Hugo and anyone else with an interest in this topic, you know, it also depends on the type of housing that you look for. If you're in a single family home whose front door lets out onto the street, it's very different than if you live in an apartment community like I do, where we have security, and which is nice because they accept packages for us too. And my daughter just turned 9 on December 12th, and she has friends within the complex. We have no qualms about turning them loose to go run to the playground together. So it's, you know, it's more of an experience like I had in childhood, where we could leave the house without a parent hovering over us like a helicopter and go play with friends.
I'm going to make a suggestion, bit of advice, I guess. Some people may argue it. I would say that when you come here, your first year, because you've got year leases, your first year, put yourself into one of the buildings. They've got a lot of amenities. You've got 24-hour guard service. You got parking garages. Generally, they're going to be located usually in a relatively convenient locations. I lived in one that was attached to a mall. Move into one of those, and during that year, learn the lay of the land. Because what you see, I see so much, is people say, well, I want to go there and I want to live in the country. And that's fine. You can come here and you can live in the country, but you better learn how, because it's very different than being in the United States living in the country. And there's a lot of things you need to plan for and you need to prepare for. You will have to have a car, which means you're going to have to go through the process of getting a license. You're going to have to go through the process of having a car. You're going to have lots of extra expenses. You may be contending with mosquitoes. I mean, there's a whole range of things that come into play. So just because you lived in the country of the United States doesn't mean you're going to come here and have the same kind of experience, because you're not. It's going to be very different. And you're going to find, I used to hate high rises.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a country boy and I hated high rises. I hated cities. Well, I still kind of hate cities, but I'm living in a high rise. I lived in a house, didn't like it, went back to a high rise. I never, if you had asked me 20 years ago if I'd be living in a high rise, hell no. Well, it's the best living to me.
It is for us.
And
currently.
you're not going to know until you've done it for a while. So give yourself that first year. But at least during that first year, if you're concerned about safety and all of that, you'll be protected. I lived in Manizales in Armenia. I found Armenia much more enjoyable. I currently live in Cali. Bleh. And too hot and hectic. Yeah, but his wife makes him live there.
Yeah, I think we should have Cliff on as a guest.
Yeah. Cliff's a great guy.
You perfectly reflect our collective experience.
Don't need much in Cali. I have one jacket to travel through Bogota. Polos only needed in Cali. Yeah, you could go naked in Cali and still be too hot.
Let's see, is there anybody's question we've neglected?
Yeah, there's one. I'm ignoring it. Hell if I know. It changes all the time anyway.
What's that?
The having a U.S. number on your phone.
Oh, yeah, that's...
I quit trying to keep up with it because it's always changing. I guess T-Mobile has a plan where you can keep your U.S. chip on a dual chip phone, and you only have to pay for it for a day on the day that you actually use it. But there's lots of different things. There's digital SIM cards. You're going to have to sort it out. I can't really tell you. I don't have it. And for me to be able to answer that every time it comes up, I would have to keep researching it all the time.
Yeah.
And I did for a while, and frankly, I'm tired of it.
A lot of the phones here have a place for 2 SIM cards, so you can keep your U.S. number and also get a Colombian number. The thing is, if you want to have a U.S. number where people with a landline in the U.S. can call you, that's not going to work. They can use your U.S. number and contact you on WhatsApp or Signal or Wire.
No, you have to have a service that will read that U.S. SIM card
Right,
and function as a phone. And like T-Mobile does it, but some others may or may not. So you can have that SIM card in your phone and have it operate as though you were in the United States.
Yeah.
But it's always changing.
It's going to be an unnecessary expense for 90% of the people because
I don't need it.
no. I typically spend between $7 and $10 a month for phone service because everybody here uses WhatsApp, which works over a Wi-Fi signal. So you really don't need data and to be able to make active phone calls here other than WhatsApp.
Well, the only here's where it comes in handy. In the free range, yes, but no. You get a Google Voice number; they're free, and like that. Yeah, except that won't work. It'll work to make a call, but I can make a call on my Colombian number. I get like 100 minutes a month free to the United States. That's not the issue. The issue is if you have a bank in the United States and you're trying to do some sort of transaction that requires verification, they're going to notify your phone in text or by call and give you a coded number that you have to input. But if you don't have that connection, you'll never receive that. So you can't authorize whatever it is you are trying to get done. That's where the problem comes in. And that's why you have to quiz T-Mobile or there's another one that's possibly.
Well, not Verizon, because
Not Verizon.
Their phones don't work here.
No, not Verizon. All I could think of is IBM, but it's not IBM. But you're going to have to check with the phone companies there. Last I knew, which may not be true now, is T-Mobile allowed you to keep their number, and you would have to pay your monthly fee, which kind of waste if you don't need it.
Yeah.
But you pay their monthly fee, and they had a small one for this particular setup. But if you had to do the verification deal, then they would charge you something like $10 for that day that you needed to use that service. So if you only need to use it once or twice a month, then you're going to take your $10 phone service and turn it into $20 or $30. That's a viable way out. There's also some companies that have digital SIM numbers that claim that will work. Like I say, I was looking into this. Things kept changing. One company went out of business, and others sprung up. I don't need it. So I said, what the hell am I doing this for?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, so AT&T, thank you. Somebody's reading my mind.
Yeah.
I think AT&T has something along those lines. I feel so happy to move permanently to Colombia, but now that the moving day approaches, I feel very anxious. Well, that's pretty normal about the change. You have any advice to manage that? Thanks for answering questions. No, you're going to feel anxious. I guess you could say I'm a world traveler, but when I was leaving the hospital and I was going to Ecuador, I was unsure. Is this really the best thing I could be doing under these circumstances? Should I be, it's you're going to go through that. You just have to ignore it.
What was your answer afterwards?
Well, the thing is, you don't turn down a new adventure. You just don't do that. Particularly, you've already set yourself up. So all those decisions have been made. Now you have a choice. Go ahead with what you planned or back out. Well, if you back out, you're a coward and you're avoiding the adventures. So go for the adventures. You're going to be fine.
Especially if you have a teen, what a great opportunity for them to become more and more adaptable to traveling the world. That's something I wanted all of my kids to understand. The entire world is available to you, but
they're going to be very adaptable.
They often, if you don't have a supportive spouse on that point, they'll have unrealistic concerns and fears.
Great advice. Thanks. I thought I was going to get hate emojis for being direct and harsh.
I don't know about you, Hugo, but for me, the biggest anxiety was getting rid of all my stuff.
It took me 2 months to narrow it down.
Once I got rid of all my stuff, my anxiety went away, and I started enjoying Colombia. It'll be a huge plus for you. And if you decide on Armenia, contact us. There are plenty of expats here.
Go to one of the coffee meetings. They're every Wednesday at 11 o'clock.
Yeah, there are people here to answer your questions and soothe your concerns.
Let's see. I use Tigo and only cost me $12 US a month. 50 gigabytes, not limited. Yeah, but you can't use Tigo for the bank verifications in the US. As far as making calls to the United States, that's easy. You can get the Google number. You get free calls and the number. I've got Mobistar here, 100 minutes a month. Never used a single minute of it. You got WhatsApp. There's so many ways to communicate. The only thing that comes in important is the bank verifications that have to take place through your cell phone. Reese, how you doing, Reese? You're going to Mexico, I believe. Let's see. Leaving U.S. in a few months. It's telling.
It's feeling real,
Oh,
I think.
it's
probably-
feeling real. We're planning to slow travel for a while, but based in Guadalajara, where my dad is in memory care. Nice. Well, you've traveled. You're going to like it. Anything new, you're gonna have a little trepidation over, but you got to plow ahead, and you're going to love it. You know, even when the bad, frustrating things happen, it's just part of the adventure. Like, for example, there's been a strike at the airports where more of a work slowdown. And so at the immigration checking in, instead of taking 10 to 20 minutes, it's been taking like 4 hours.
And that strike is over now, by the way.
Yeah, it is over. Yeah, I just saw somebody, took me 10 minutes to fly through. But during that time period, so you arrive, it's 4 hours. You know what? Don't get worked up over it. What else you got to do? You know, people watch. I mean, I'm sure it's better than watching a movie. You know, you watch other people blow a gasket and enjoy yourself over how they're getting themselves all worked up over they got to wait an hour. You know, it's like you got to make the good times out of all the times.
Some Europeans know how to relax. Most North Americans have to learn to relax. So once you get here, you'll start to get the hang of it.
Getting rid of all the stuff, closing the biz, learning to let go. I gathered up basically all my stuff, and I sent messages out to people that I personally knew, and basically said that I had a lot of very nice stuff, and I said, you can have all of it. As a matter of fact, you have to take all of it. And it was 25 cents on the dollar. And within minutes of me sending that out, I had somebody step up. It was worth it to me just to get it out of my hair. My biggest trouble was taking the 2 big suitcases and figuring out how I was going to distill my life of the 60 years prior into 2 suitcases. What's going to be valued to me? And there's some things you don't do a damn thing with. You just want to keep them near you.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we're all like that. So there's a couple things. I have this Jehovah's Witness Bible that hasn't left me in decades because it has a particular meaning to me. There's just certain things. A couple other books. Books were the hardest part for me.
Yeah.
Because I had a library. I mean, a large library. I used to collect books. And to narrow it down, I get down to like 30.
And they're so heavy.
They're so freaking heavy. And it wasn't going to fit. And it's like, get it down to 20. I ended up with 8. It was heartbreaking to leave them behind, you know.
Well, I'll tell you what's heartbreaking is all of my books now are digital. If the Wi-Fi goes out, I have nothing to do. The computer's dead and no books to read. So.
Well, the sick part of this, I'd already read all of them. Let's see, Cliff, I traveled last week to U.S. Colombia migration was a snap. U.S. immigration was a problem. Too many stupid questions. Yeah, well, you know, maybe that'll change. All right, we've run the hour. I'm still here. I'm still standing.
Yeah, you are. You're peppier than when we began.
I'm still here. Well, you know, I got excited when I got to be able to call people names and stuff. You know, it's like that was exciting.
You love doing this.
Yeah, yeah, I like it. I'm used to it. It's if I didn't like it, I wouldn't be doing this today. Trust me. I went to sleep yesterday at 4:00 in the afternoon and didn't wake up to 6:30 this morning. And if anybody knows me at all, they know that it's a miracle if I sleep past 4 hours. Something's trying to recover here. All right. So we're going to end it here. We'll see you next week. Getting pretty close to Christmas. Glad to see you're doing okay. Thank you. Thank you, Reese. I was hoping you'd make it to Colombia, but I'm sure you will on a
just
visit.
Going to Guadalajara first.
any more information on Star Insurance for the visa requirements, use the something card. What's it called?
I'm sorry, I missed the question I was reading.
The Visa Insurance something card. Talked about it last
I
week.
can't think of it.
Good to see you on the air. Pray for your health improves. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right. We're going to end it here. I will see you next week. I think she's here next week.
She'll be back in the area, so I hope she's available next week.
We'll let you know.
Paola's much better looking than me, so I'm sure the audience would appreciate having her here.
Well, the reason I would like to have her, somebody like her, is to get the Colombian viewpoint
absolutely.
on a lot of these things. All right, that's it. Ciao.
Bye.